Is the Lucrehulk, the big donut-shaped Trade Federation and CIS capital ship from the Clone Wars and even earlier, the perfect carrier? Well, we'll discuss that and more on today's Star Wars video. Today's video is brought to you by my good friends over at Vite Ramen. You guys know the deal. Vite Ramen, longtime supporter of the channel. I think it's safe to say that I couldn't do what I do without them, at least not without some major stress. Recently, we came together to raise over $7,000 for my local youth hockey team, but I know what some of you cold-hearted buggers are saying. I don't care about hockey. If you're going to sell me the product, sell it. Well, Vite Ramen has health-conscious, easy to make, and absolutely delicious noodles. In fact, I've actually partnered with Vite Ramen to make my own flavor, Massaman curry. It's genuinely incredible. As always, I recommend that you put in a little less water, then add some crunchy peanut butter. It's such a unique taste. You know what? I recommend reading the comments. I never delete any. Good reviews, bad reviews, they're all allowed down below. But right now you can get Vite Ramen for 10% off by using code Eckharts at the link in the description. Again, that's code Eckharts, 10% off, plus a couple goodies. But let's talk the Lucrehulk. Was it the perfect carrier in Star Wars? Well, in a way, it was kind of perfect for the CIS. Now, I've covered this aspect of the Lucrehulk in a prior video, so I'm only going to touch on it briefly. But one of the major things that made the Lucrehulk so effective was the fact that it was there. The Republic, no real standing navy. The Corporate Sector Authority, same thing. Across the galaxy, there weren't fleets of warships in the years prior to the Clone Wars. What there were, however, were massive trading vessels. Lucrehulks first saw service in the years before the Clone Wars as cargo ships for the Trade Federation. The Trade Federation was gaining more and more independence at this time. They had a seat within the Senate, they had immense political sway, and because of piracy as well as the lack of Republic protections, they began modifying their Lucrehulks not only to carry droid starfighters, but also to possess some weaponry. The thing to know about this time is that although there weren't any big navies like that of the Republic, individual sectors and planets still massed their own protection forces. The Lucrehulk would have been larger than most warships in existence, and that's because of the Ruusan Reformations. The Ruusan Reformations placed legal requirements on the size and power of warships, which the Trade Federation skirted around by transforming an already built vessel into a quasi-warship. The Lucrehulk most likely had a decent hyperdrive, it had powerful shielding, a thick hull, and of course just a ton of space for weapons, sensors, or additional armor to be mounted on the hull. Of course, the inside of the ship also allowed the Lucrehulk to not only field thousands of droid starfighters, but also entire invasion forces, and you guys probably know that because you have seen the Battle of Naboo. Presumably the Lucrehulk we saw in that film was only a lightly modified variant. It was still, significantly before the Clone Wars. It's got that obvious weak spot, but we can see the ship is completely resistant to any sort of fighter grade damage. Also, a large reactor that allows you to pump a lot of energy into shields. The Incredible Cross Sections book for the Phantom Menace actually has some really cool details about the droid control ship. It goes into the Neimoidians' grand plans to convert their existing cargo fleet, and also points out that many of the ship's guns were spread across the equatorial band, so there were vast parts of the Lucrehulk which were undefended by weaponry. That's why they relied on the droid starfighters, but still a pretty clear weakness. But it also gives numbers, specifically that the droid control ship had a diameter of 3.17 kilometers, that it could hold over 1,500 starfighters alongside a seriously large ground contingent, including nearly 10,000 combined tanks, troop carriers, MTTs, and more. Unsurprisingly, one of the other major upgrades to the droid control ship Lucrehulk was in its communication and sensor arrays. Not surprising given the fact that originally the droid armies were going to be controlled entirely from the mothership. Still, the new Essential Guide to Vehicles and Vessels reiterates that the droid control ship's previous life as a cargo vessel was somewhat obvious due to the mere 40-some guns covering the massive ship's surface. However, the good thing about the vessel is that it could be further modified, and that's exactly what we saw. I'll read directly from a Wizards of the Coast supplement on the Trade Federation battleship battleship. When the battleships moved to frontline combat during the Clone Wars, the Trade Federation upgraded them once again. These later battleships carry significantly more weaponry, but still rely heavily on small fighters for close support. As such, these ships are able to control their own droid starfighters when a more effective droid control ship is not available. Finally, the upgraded battleships also feature detachable core ships, allowing the center sphere to make landfall when needed for repairs, supplies, and direct loading. The addition of the weapons is huge though, and this actually comes from on-screen evidence. I remember seeing an image about 5 years ago that I just can't find now, which showed the ILM model for the Lucrehulk in Revenge of the Sith, and it has hundreds of weapons across both the ring and the central core ship. Unfortunately, and this is what drives me crazy about Star Wars, when they wiped the Legends continuity, they also removed over a decade of old behind-the-scenes articles, Star Wars hyperspace material, and more, which is, it drives me crazy. If it's in the video, you can thank my editor Marmar, but I've been able to find the image again. Anyway, the Starships of the Galaxy Guide points out that during the Clone Wars, the distinction between ordinary Trade Federation battleships and droid control ships becomes even more distinct, and what that means is there were still some Lucrehulks used to control specifically droid armies, whether on the ground or starfighters, compared to the traditional Lucrehulk, which was meant as a battleship, a frontline monster pounding away at enemy fleets. The difference is, because the droid control ships were not typically seeing battle, they didn't get the same upgrades. Probably no hardened reactor, less guns, you get the idea. Still, based on the image we get from ILM, the Clone Wars era refitted Lucrehulk had nearly 500 laser cannons and over 150 point defense quad laser batteries. That's in addition to over 50 guns on the central detachable core, so that's a significant upgrade in terms of firepower, and I think really cements the Lucrehulk as a really special and effective carrier. Like, this is one of the dominant vessels during the Clone Wars. It was easily competing with ready-made warships like the Venator, while also facilitating entire planetary invasions pretty much single-handedly. I love the Lucrehulk because really it's nicely different than other carriers we see in Star Wars. I mean, sure, some like Mon Calamari cruisers are heavily shielded, but the Lucrehulk takes it to the next level. It's a beast meant to sit in the middle of your formation, soak up firepower, dish out damage. It's not the most mobile vessel, but it doesn't need to be. It's focused on two things: surviving and getting assets where they're needed. Its simple design really allows maximal efficiency in my opinion. So yeah, I love the Lucrehulk, and it was a beast during the Clone Wars. It bullied other ships, it could bully entire planets, and it was arguably one of the most effective pure carriers in Star Wars history. The Lucrehulk would still see service after the Clone Wars, but it fell out of popularity pretty quickly. The Empire could have used a large carrier like the Lucrehulk, but instead they preferred to put their power in capital ships, whereas the Rebel Alliance or other factions honestly didn't have enough starfighters to justify using the Lucrehulk as anything other than a mobile training base or station, which, to be honest, they sometimes did use. The Fortressa, for example, was a famous Rebel Alliance Lucrehulk. It was also destroyed by the Death Star's super laser, showing, I think, the risk to the Rebel Alliance in a very dramatic fashion of having non-mobile vessels. But I mean, even then, it managed to bring nearly 500 fighters to attempt to destroy the non-finished Death Star. But guys, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know, is there something you'd like to see me cover? A ship, a topic, an idea? Let me know down below.